You are listening to Live Free with Rebecca Packard. With this podcast, Rebecca will help spiritual entrepreneurs and mompreneurs experience emotional freedom so that they can create calm and balance in all areas of their life. If you're ready to release your emotional baggage, trauma, and that constant feeling of overwhelm, then you are in the right place. Your journey starts now. Here's your host, Rebecca Packard.
Hi, welcome back. We're so glad to have you here today. And our special guest today is Sarah, and she is joining us from Hawaii. That's really exciting. Sarah Rossiter is a New York artist, now finds herself in Hawaii in a spiritual space, mixing her creativity and her amazing abundance with her art, with the mothering that she's doing, because she is a mother raising children, and all the other things that she's doing. We'll talk about those in a little bit, but we're really excited to have Sarah here because she's going to bring out a little bit of a different aspect for us in the space of connecting with your creativity and the things that she's doing to help herself, one, stay sane, stay balanced, show up in the world, but connect easily and effortlessly with her creativity to share her art with the world, to share that language of art with the world. Because I know there's so many of you out there who question yourself on, I love art, I love being creative, but who am I to share my art with the world? And we know everybody goes through that. It's just like in the coaching world. It's just like in the writing world. It's just like with people who are going to create programs and show up with all these different things. When something amazing is going to flow through you, the ego comes in and says, who do you think you are? Just keep going, right? So Sarah, welcome. We're excited to have you. For those tuning in who don't know who you are, can you just introduce yourself and give them a little bit of your background?
Sure. Thank you, Rebecca. I love your show, and I'm so happy to be here. I grew up in upstate New York and then moved to DC, where I went to an arts high school. And since I was quite young, I knew I was going to be an artist. I was making art from a young age. And I went to college at Cooper Union in New York. So about 1989 in New York City was a very exciting time in the art scene. And I arrived there kind of more like I am now, a bit of a spiritual person, very comfortable, painting and drawing and making sculpture and just freely expressing myself. But when I got to art school, God was not too cool there. And also, I think that just the politics of the time and the intensity, and also the teachers were pretty burnt out. Artists don't make a lot of money usually, and a lot of artists have to teach. And so I noticed that none of my teachers were really successful artists. They were all pretty bitter. And I think I picked up a lot on their sensibility, which was very intellectual, very brilliant, very compelling, but it negated this idea of spirituality in one's life. And it just kind of like very polemically said, like, you either in or out, and there's no space here for talking about, healing, devotion, consciousness. Like, it just wasn't a part. It was not cool. And so I feel like I left that part of myself behind for a while. And although I was a very good artist and pretty successful, for still being in college, I was already showing in Soho galleries. I just didn't feel like I was really speaking my truth. And so even though I had many opportunities, I turned some of them down because I felt like they weren't aligned for me. And I knew that I was destined for something bigger, like that I had to always speak truth. I couldn't just go along with it because it was, hip or, oh, cool, we're going to be famous. Like, I didn't want to be famous. I want to say something of value. So I've always been a little bit different from some of my peers in that way of just like, I'm not here for the ego. I'm here for the message and the connection. And it took me a long time to figure out how to integrate that with my art practice. And I kind of kept my spiritual practices and my searching separate. And also September 11th had a huge impact on me. I was actually there when it happened, and gosh, it really broke me. But I guess in many ways, when you get broken, it's an important moment where you kind of take stock and you have to come back and recover. So the recovery from September 11th, I think, connected me to God again, to this concept of endless consciousness that's available there to you, that's good and kind and loving and supportive. And I think I had just gotten so negative, and I was so devastated to see all those people die at once. It really hit me hard. And so moving to California in 2000, and then I had been in New York for September 11th, but kind of like working through that recovery from trauma. I know this is your area of specialty. And realizing that I had PTSD from that. It was affecting I went to grad school in like 2003, and a teacher would play. I know this is kind of a long-winded intro. I'm on my tangent already. Anyways, a teacher played a video of the towers falling, and I had like a seizure. I fell on the floor. Visually, I was so impacted by that vibration of those people dying in front of me that it kind of derailed me. And I had to look really hard at that. I'd be like, whoa, what's happening? How can I heal? How can I function as an artist if I can't, or a person, if I can't process this experience? So I feel like I've had so many gifts along the way and wonderful teachers that have supported me. And now I have a podcast called The Psychic Artist, where I integrate these two aspects of myself. So I've become a psychic reader, and I give artists and other creative people readings that I channel from angels and spirit guides, and it helps them to connect more deeply to their soul purpose. And so that's where I'm coming from.
Yay, that's fantastic. It's amazing that when we stop and really think about it, a lot of people will say, oh, well, art. You have to fit in a box to do art. And I have a really funny way of seeing that, when a lot of art, we want to separate the religious, the spiritual, the innate aspect of what that is. But when you go back to the original people that were like, hey, we're going to do art, guess what they were doing art on? Oh, all the religious aspects of things. They were painting angels, they were painting saints, they were painting all of these different areas that people weren't necessarily privy to. And they'll say, oh, well, that's because they were trying to teach a story. And I'm like, but art is a story. It's a constant evolution of a story. And a lot of the times it's the evolution and the story of the artist. So I really love that, like, you have been able to come back and put those two things together, because there really is no art without the soul, right? There's no, you can tell when someone's like, yeah, I got paid a lot of money to do this because somebody told me, and I kind of sold out for that. And you're like, yeah, that's nice. But when someone spills their soul onto a canvas, you go, wow. Those are the ones you see people sitting in front of for hours going, wow. Like, you can feel the brushstrokes, you can feel the thoughts, you can feel the unraveling of the things that have happened in the story that's come out to that space. And you can make your story from that space. A lot of people look at art and say, well, this is how I felt. And then they'll say, oh, well, this is what the person was thinking when they were making this. And even if they don't completely align, it's like you were given permission to open your imagination. And that's fantastic that you're bringing those two facets back together, the spirituality and the art itself. It is
I just wanted to say one thing there, Rebecca. It feels like art is a transference of energy sometimes. So like when you mentioned the art about angels, paintings from the Renaissance or before then, I'm always curious, how did that artist, that person feel about angels? Like, was this like, did they have a vision, a visitation? Like, how did they transfer that knowledge? It's so interesting to think about, also through the history of various religions, how were angels mentioned? And then I also thought about, it's not always a particular painterly expression that can connect people to that energy. Because, for example, one of the most inspiring artists in my life is a guy named Felix Gonzalez Torres, who I met in New York when I was in my 20s, and I was working at a gallery where he showed, and his work is so conceptual, basically like a string of light bulbs hanging from the ceiling represents, this angelic experience, but he's referencing, he's giving such a small symbol that gives you this large metaphorical experience. And it's about loss or memory, or, it's even a very political message in some ways, but his energy was transferred through his work. So I like to think about people's energy, even throughout time and space. You don't have to be in the presence. Like now, in talking about him, I feel his energy is present. So it's a very mysterious, mystical practice, art making and sharing images. And recently I've been thinking about this idea of transference, when you make an image, and even like putting Reiki into a painting and people receiving it later. There's a lot there.
Oh yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of wonderful jewelry and paintings that are circulating with a charge of different aspects of Reiki and Ho'oponopono and other amazing spiritual gifts that people are sharing. And that's a really incredible gift to be able to share and pass on to somebody, is to take and give them something to have in their home or to show in their space that's continuously sharing healing. That's very powerful. In the space of moving in, you've been a lot of places. You were in New York, you were in California, now you're in Hawaii, you were in some other spaces in between there. Right now, as a mom living in Hawaii, how are you keeping your balance? We know you moved out there in the last year, right? And you're kind of still finding your balance in the islands and the way of life there and housing. And we all know how the housing market is right now. But doing that with kids and showing up in the space of still utilizing your practice, still, I mean, the girl is on the go. She's got her podcast. She's in the process of writing a book that is going to be the sister to a course that she's sharing in October. And we'll talk more about that towards the end. We'll give you a little insight to some webinars that are coming up. But how are you keeping your balance? How are you showing up for yourself in that space? Because I think a lot of the times people will hear you say, oh, you're doing this, you're doing that. And they're like, wow, she's busy. But I think also in the space of, you need to be relaxed to have your creativity flow. You need to be in your space of like, here's my bliss so I can show it. So how are you doing that for yourself?
Well, I definitely had to dig deep to make this move. Honestly, I made a transition in the last year, not only in physical location from upstate New York, previously Brooklyn, previously LA, to Hawaii. We moved to Maui first, and now I'm on Kauai. But I made a transition to trust in my guidance. So I really check in with my angels and guides all day long and ask for protection and support. And I do what they tell me. So the podcast is a result of that. Making art is a result of that. Choosing to take my children out of school and homeschool them is a result of that. Even though each step along the way, it wasn't easy. I mean, my rational brain said, what? You're in a perfect school. I mean, it's a Waldorf school. It's the best school in the whole freaking world. Like, why would you take your kids out? But the guidance said it's not aligned, and it's either not safe. Like sometimes it was COVID related, or sometimes it was just not aligned for the highest good of all, or for that particular child in that moment. And boy, was it hard to listen. And, I have a lot of voices saying like, don't do it. Oh, you're ruining everything. But actually, as I look back, I can see that my children, as I bring them close and I hold them in this energy space that I'm creating, I think that's the most important thing for us to remember as parents. They chose us, and we're ultimately responsible for what they learn right now. And even though it's hard, and I never pictured myself as a homeschooling mom, and I'm still learning, when I turn to this avenue of operating in life, things get provided. The right amazing homeschool coach showed up and helped me with a training, and the kids are learning resilience. They're learning what I'm learning. So as I'm learning these super metaphysical out there things, we use them to guide our lives now. Like, how unique is that? I was even thinking that some of what we're doing, I should share as a curriculum for Angel Light Homeschool Mom. There's things that we do every day. We do grounding and clearing. We clear our chakras. We connect to the energy of the earth. We talk to spirit animals. Like, we have so much going on over here that is not the typical education in the West. For some reason, this is going to serve them later in life, and we just don't know what's coming. Honestly, I've had a sense that COVID is not ending for a couple of years. So I stick to what the guidance is. And so I can feel the energy during the day when I'm trying to make a decision. For example, if I'm feeling really blocked, if I'm feeling really dark, if I'm angry. Like last night I got super angry, and then I actually listened to one of my podcast episodes. Accidentally, I was thinking, I should go do some tapping. I should do something to clear this, and I was editing something. So I pressed this episode. I just kept listening, and it was a channeled message, and I don't remember saying half of it. And it helped me so much just to release the dark energy that was attached to me and return to self. And I felt so bright and light. And I was like, that's pretty funny how it's a gift to me as well. Like what I'm putting out is such a leap of faith, and so outside my comfort zone, and yet it's serving me and the people that give me feedback that it's helpful to them. So I think the message is to trust your inner guidance and to get really clear. I have really strong boundaries right now. I don't communicate with anyone really. I'm just in a couple courses, with you and a couple things, and I don't let anything in that the guides tell me not to. So it's strange. They will say just, you can't talk to people right now. And it's not a judgment of those people. It's just that I need a safe space in order to be able to channel this much light. I need to keep a clear slate. So I'm just really simplified, and I don't look at it as work. When I do the podcast or listen to the podcast, I get so filled up that's like a spiritual practice. So that's where I'm at right now.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I think that for a lot of people, that's a super helpful hint right there, is that boundaries. A lot of people want to make boundaries into a bad thing. Boundaries are the most powerful thing you can give yourself. And it's a real eye-opener when you start to do that. I know that Sarah and I have very similar practices where we're not sitting there scrolling. We're not out there listening to all these other things.
I'm not exposing myself to information that's not supportive.
And if it's not making you feel good, that doesn't mean you have to continue to listen just because everybody else is. You can unplug. You can choose to say, you know what? I know that this message isn't pertinent to me because it's making me feel bad. It's making me feel separate from myself. It's not making me feel love. It's making me feel fear. It's making me feel hate. It's making me feel resistance. And these are not things I want to feel. So now I'm going to choose to shut it down, because I have the ability to do that. It has a power button. I can release it. Goodbye.
And I think a lot of people don't realize how empathic they are. That was a huge lesson for me this year. And and I've done a session with you, and it was super helpful. It was just realizing, number one, I have the power to cut cords and to change habits and belief systems. Number two, I am so empathic that, if I think about somebody on the other side of the world, they're in my energy field for until I clear that energy. So it's really hard to get clear and connect to self if you're filled up with, like, I used to do a session with someone remotely, and she'd say, you're 90% capacity of empathic energy. I was like, what is that? And it took me a while to figure what that means. It's like, I take on people's feelings. And so I need to be really careful, even who I call. Like, I'm looking for a place to live. And if I look on Craigslist, even for a minute, and I come across something that's not aligned for me, I take in, like, I can feel all the energy in that house. If it's a scam, I take on the energy of that scammer. And then it takes me like a lot of money and time to clear that. And luckily I'm getting better and I can do it for myself. But I also use the Healy, this frequency device. And I have also PEMF mat. So I use a lot of frequencies to help soothe my nervous system and drop in and sort of recharge, tune out, unplug. It is really important. And I have had to get more vigilant about what I allow. Even in my house, I'm developing better boundaries with who I interact with and who I talk to. And it's kind of funny that I'm living in a resort. I moved from hotel to hotel every couple of weeks, and that sounds crazy, but at the same time, the angels have told me it's more aligned because the energy here is temporary, and I'm moving and growing so quickly that that place, any house you stay in, if you're renting from someone, the energy of that person is in your field, and you can't always clear energy if someone owns a place. So, I'm looking to buy my own place where I can infuse it and clear it and do that preparation to be in a space. But it's a really interesting concept if you think of your body as an autonomous space, and then your energy field as an autonomous space, and then your working world, and and throughout time and space, forward and backwards. So I'm doing a lot of healing work on my past right now, often subconsciously, and sometimes it'll come up to the surface, and I'll be like, okay, now I'm healing that trauma that happened in a past life or earlier in this life. And it's great to know, and you can speak to this, that you can let it go really quickly.
Very quickly. Yeah, it doesn't have to be all drudgery. You can just be, this is all, we're done with that. Thank you. Goodbye. You can Elsa it, let it go.
Yeah.
It's definitely one of those things where utilizing the space that you're in as part of, a lot of people have a hard time connecting that. And the second you realize that your living space is an outward projection of the internal conversation, or has a connection with your internal conversation, man, does that change everything, doesn't it? You go, wow, we're gonna clean house. And it is.
Yeah.
It's for real. It's why feng shui, and it's why energy clearing, it's why protection and all of these different things are so powerful, is because they do have a conversation with us on our conscious, our subconscious, and our innate space. And so I love that you're recognizing and you're moving forward with okay, angels told me next we're gonna go one more hotel, and then we're figuring out from there, because we're still growing, right? And for people who are in that space of you're in the in-between, just be in the in-between right now, right? It's hard, it's uncomfortable, but the in-between is teaching you something greater, right? It's taking you to a journey that you really think of it the spinning the wheel, right? At the carnival, you're like, oh, it's going tick, 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 tick. Not yet, not yet, not yet. But when I get it, it's going to be the $1 million square, right?
Maybe. I also feel like it's showing me about impermanence, and really, what are you attached to? If you can trust God to give you a home when you're ready, and I'm making efforts for sure. I'm following leads and making effort and putting, I'm working on manifesting, but I realized in order to manifest the thing that is most meaningful to me, I have to let go of a lot of my ideas. So I'm really working on, tapping on money, on allowing abundance to come into my life, of a belief pattern that I couldn't own a house myself, that it has to be a man or a patriarchal system or a family that allows me to have this. So really taking ownership, autonomy, working on so many levels in order to prepare the ground for the next thing that's going to grow. But then sometimes I think, wow, the next thing that's going to grow our idea of what we think we want is the $1 million prize, the manifestation of our biggest dreams, the best house, the best life, the best kids, the best marriage, whatever. It's not always for real. That's also an idea. And I get that I might move onto a boat and start sailing the world. Like I'm just so open to breaking down these ideas of what we should have and what's correct and I'm really just listening to what's aligned, because we don't always know. I mean, the angels are magical beings that can see forward and backwards in time. And there's so much going on that they have to line up in the world if they want to help you. If you're asking for help, which I do all the time, they might be, having us move into a situation that's temporary so that we can meet somebody, so that we can move here. But then it might be so that I can give a teaching on a certain topic. Like it's just very complex. And the best attitude is just to be positive and open, receptive, and grateful. Like I'm grateful that we have a place to sleep and that we're safe, we're healthy. We're working on kindness in the family. It's not easy to be in a small space with two girls fighting. And we're learning, but I try not to look at it as like, oh, this is not, they were supposed to each have their own room and a dog, or, I try to be open to like, well, we're all souls and we came here to learn. So this is our situation. And what can we take from this and how can we give back? And it's really putting me on the line, man. I always had this separation, just like art, spirituality. I had like family and art. I thought like when I moved to New York 2 years ago, I was like, okay, I got to get them in school. I'm going to get a babysitter and then I'm going to have my career. And I didn't realize that like they are the hardest thing for me, like having kids, having a family. It pushes your buttons every which way. And it shows you all the ways you need to grow. And then you got to grow into that and give all the spiritual knowledge that you might have in a nice meditation room has to be, experienced as a mom. and it kicks your butt. And I feel like, you just wake up every day and you learn to function in ways that you didn't know you could. And I think they learn from seeing that too. And hopefully it gives them some insight and power when they're older. They can see like, all right, things aren't always going to go the way I want. And how can I still do what I love and be kind to others? And I haven't really introduced the idea of being in service to God yet, but I think to your soul, being connected, doing what you love is a lot like being in service to God. You listen to that thing that's like really calling you. And if you can't do it because you're so busy changing diapers and feeding people, then find a way that you can incorporate that. That's been the biggest challenge for me, like taking the time to record a podcast, in the 10 minutes that I have, between 7 and 7:30 or something. And then it's interesting how that feeds back into the children's lives. Like they watch me, they're watching me become happier, more successful at something. And hopefully that gives them a good role model.
Yeah, that's amazing.
How about?
I definitely think everyone listening should take that in, is that it's not about being perfect. It's not about having all the answers. It's not about having the script to follow. Listen to your inner being. Listen to your greatest, highest self and follow the little angelic pieces of candy, piece of candy of the path that you're really here for, because the loud noise of the outside world can really shift you away from that. And the more and more and more you move in the space of gratitude, in the space of boundaries, in the space of showing up for self, in the space of tuning in to earth and nature and higher self and God and angels and all the things, you go, oh, so this is life. Not keeping up with the Joneses or chasing the Kardashians. Like
it really is a moment to moment thing, when you touch your feet to the dirt or when you feel the wind on your face, like that's what you got, An artist that I knew in California died recently. Was so kind of like, I saw it on Instagram yesterday. I was like, whoa, okay. life is short, guys. Like, do what you love, get to it right now. And, we're going to have another chance at it in your next lifetime. But as I told my husband yesterday, I was like, wouldn't it be nice if you took what you know now and you did something with it instead of having to wait another 60 years in your next lifetime to come back around to it? Like, there's this progression in lifetime. We're born as babies. We got to come out again. Like, we've got a lot of knowledge right now. And I know that everybody listening has some special gift to share, and just go ahead and share it. Like, what is holding us back? What, this idea that someone's going to criticize us? Oh, that it's not cool, that it's, we might be weird. Like, who cares? If whether you believe in reincarnation or not, well, then the people who are criticizing you are going to die. And, at least the message of truth that you have in your heart would have come out in this lifetime and maybe be left somewhere in a recording to share with your children or a future generation. Like, we have so much innate knowledge. It's great to share it.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Wave your weird flag, I always say, right? Like, just get your flag, wave it high and wave it. Because that's the other thing is you open up the conversation by you showing up and waving your flag, by you showing up and speaking your truth, by you showing up and sharing your gift. You open the door to so many others to say, yes, I will share my message too. Yes, I will step into my light and my greatness. And the ripple keeps going. No candle goes dim by lighting another candle, right? I love it. Yeah. So I'm so glad that you were here today, that we were able to talk and that you were able to share how you're showing up each day and how you're making the best of all of the different lessons that you're learning that are coming at you. I know in October, you're going to be having Abundance and Creativity course where you're having a really amazing guest panel that will be showing up. And in between now and then, if people want to learn more about that course, they can tune into a webinar that you have coming up. When will that be?
Yes, so I have a webinar starting, let me just I have you and Marissa Eamon are going to be in this webinar that we're going to do in September. And so it's on September 24th at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And it's going to be connected to this course where you two are guest teachers. And so it's called Creativity and Consciousness. And in this course, it's a 10-week live course for an hour and a half on Fridays. And in this course, I will have a bunch of guest experts come and show people from their perspective how to connect to their soul, their creative purpose, and how to clear away the things that are blocking them. So in your case, I feel like you are just so helpful. You work with a lot of expert healers and are able to help anyone find what's blocking them. And let's just clear it so that we can get back to doing our work. So I'm really looking forward to that part of the course with you. And in this panel, we're going to talk about the ways in which you and Marissa connect to spirit and how you are able to do your work so fluidly without being blocked by societal beliefs and systems and structures that kind of say, like, squish you down. So it's about getting more free. And it's also for anyone who wants to be creative. Like, you may not be an artist, you may not be a musician or even an actor or a director. Like, there's a lot of ways in which we express creativity. We're all creative beings. And I feel that we have this belief in this society, not always, like sometimes in Europe, it's much more encouraged, but although there it's like you have to have a degree or something, but there's a lot of ideas around who's allowed to do what. And obviously I've done a lot of training as an artist, and I respect skill and brilliance, but even the most skilled people I know, some of the most brilliant people I know, are not connected to their heart. And it's so hard for them to take the next step because they've got voices in their head or entities in their head, people, voices telling them, energy holding them back. And so I'm hopeful that in this course and also in the webinar that we can help people let go of some of the stuff that is blocking their ultimate expression of creativity, whatever that is for them. Like, so it could be writing a book, could be writing a poem, could be, making something greater than yourself. So like an expression that's not just about like one's ego, but that is allowing the divine to flow through you. I found a practice where I can do that as a painter, as a sculptor, and now as a podcast host, channeling. When you allow energy that is bright and light and clear to flow through you, what comes out is really uplifting and supportive for humanity.
Yeah, that's amazing. I'm so excited to be a part of your guest panel and to share and to help people open that door. And it is so true. The more we let go of all of those things, the more we remove the glass ceiling, the more we open up and have these conversations, the more people can tune in and raise themselves up, raise their vibrations, and raise their communities and humanity. And all of us should be here living our legacy life, right? Don't always put the coin in for the next go round. Live your legacy now, right? I love it. Thank you so much, Sarah, for being here. You guys, there will be links to everything that we've talked about in the show notes. We're going to link you with how to connect with Sarah on Facebook and Instagram, and how to connect with her course and her upcoming webinar. So make sure you check out the show notes. And if you have any questions, we want you to ask them. We will be responding to these questions, whether you're listening in our live space right now and asking questions, or if you're catching us on the replay, leave the questions. We will tune in and we will answer your questions. Okay, everybody. So thank you, Sarah, for being here. Thank you for showing up in this space. And thank you, everyone, for showing up and listening and tuning into us. We'll see you next week. And if there's one thing, Sarah, that you were to get off of this and be like, oh, I wish I said that, what would that one thing be?
Well, the angels are telling me to share the website link. So it's sarahrossiter.com/trainings. So you can find out more there about the webinar and the course. And I just feel that your vibration is so lovely, and it's a pleasure to join you in this space. And the knowledge that you're sharing is invaluable. Thank you so much, Rebecca.
Thank you. Thank you, Sarah. I'm so glad you're here. Mahalo, right?
Yeah,
and
mahalo and namaste.
Yeah, and we will see you again next week, everyone. So tune in then.
Well, hey there. Thanks for listening to today's episode. We would love it if you would leave us a rating and review in your favorite podcast player. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode.